All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our High Counselor webinar today. My name is Gracie. I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager here at High Counselor, and I will be hosting this webinar with our guest speaker, Takunda. So thank you for joining us today. Before we jump in, I just want to give a few minutes to let people join the webinar on LinkedIn Live, and then we'll go ahead and get started. But again, we will have a chat throughout this webinar today, so feel free to throw in any questions you have regarding either High Counselor or any questions for our guest speaker, as well as anything you want to know about data science in general that go off of this presentation today. So before we jump in, again, my name is Gracie. I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager here at High Counselor, and today we are focusing on Roadmap to Ace Your Career in Data Science. So before we jump into our guest speaker, Takunda, I will just share a little bit about High Counselor and our background. So to get started, we are a career accelerator that helps job seekers land their dream job through a 4+ week training that will cover important topics, concepts that are frequently asked during interviews. So you will go through this training program and you'll attend behavioral, HR, and technical sessions, as well as having our team optimize your resume and your LinkedIn profile. So there will also be sessions on topics like networking, salary negotiation, things along those lines, which is something we can help with in the networking phase as well. So through our instructors and our one-on-one mock sessions and tools, we basically help you simplify the networking process and make you feel more confident as you apply for jobs. So we do have automated email networking for our candidates, and we also provide direct referrals with all different companies for our candidates as well. And all of these resources are available during the networking phase. And on top of that, we just launched our new auto application tool, which is working great. So we currently have tracks in software engineering, data-related roles, product management, and Salesforce. So if you are interested in any of those, feel free to apply. Now, obviously, this is just a quick overview, but if any more information is needed, we do host info sessions every week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 o'clock Central. So we do have one tonight, and that'll be hosted by our other CSM, Kinsley. And we also have more information and recordings on our website at highcounselor.com. Now, our next cohort start date is going to be December 19th. And there also is a job fair on December 13th. So keep that in mind. You can also take a look at the events that we are hosting on LinkedIn as well as High Counselor website to apply for our program. So as you all know, we are focusing on acing your career in data science. So a little intro on our wonderful guest speaker we have today. Takunda has 6 years of experience in data science. He started as a data analyst at Experts Exchange, then joined Google, where he worked on building systems to detect and stop bots attacking different Google products. He utilized data science and machine learning to fight spammers and misinformation while he was on the YouTube trust and safety team. Now he is a senior data scientist at Reddit, where he focuses on improving safety on the platform through statistical analysis and machine learning. So Takunda, thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And Takunda has been a guest speaker before, so if you've attended his previous webinar, that was awesome. We are so happy to have him back. Gonna go ahead and share his presentation, but keep in mind we will have a few times to do some Q&A, so feel free to throw in your questions in the chat and we will have him answer them. So Takunda, I will share your presentation and we'll get started.
Thanks, Gracie.
Yeah.
Awesome. I guess we'll dive into it. Hi, everyone. It's Takunda here. Again, second time coming back, so it's nice to see some familiar faces here. All right. So today we're going to be talking about roadmap to acing your data science career. And that's just a bit of intro about me. All right. So the main thing here is, and the most important thing of the kind of theme of today's discussion will be about being intentional. So really, I want to just kind of nail this in. You have to be intentional with your career. But you might be thinking, what exactly does that mean, Takunda? This is very kind of generic. What does that mean? So what this means really is not just kind of drifting in your career, but really being a CEO of your own journey. Basically, what I mean here is it takes being like more proactive than just reactive in your career. Sometimes I think, you get a good job and then you put your head down and you do your job. And then when you lift your head up, it's been 5 years, it's been 10 years, and you're kind of just coasting, right? Unfortunately, coasting right now, especially with the economy that we're in and kind of the craziness that's going on in big tech, there's a lot of layoffs going. Coasting really isn't an option. You kind of have to be more intentional, really have purpose, and really have an idea of what you want from your career and how to achieve those things. So that's what we're talking about today. And so it's a difference really between kind of, being a passenger in a car. Your career here is the car, this analogy, but being just kind of in the car versus really being like driving the car and shaping the way things go and determining when to turn left, when to turn right, and when to pivot. So when we talk about an intentional career, it really comes down to these four pillars that you see in front of your screen. You need a plan, you need a community, you need to do performance evaluations, and you obviously have to keep learning. So the plan specifically that we'll go over a bit more in a second here is really the blueprint that identifies where you are today and dictates where you want to be. So really here we're trying to highlight kind of the difference between today and tomorrow, right? So understanding really where you are realistically and honestly with yourself and figuring out where you want to be and how you can get there, kind of setting the path, the GPS, so to speak, if we're continuing the analogy of the car before. The second part is the community. Now, a community is just, the people that will help you become better at what you do. And these people don't necessarily always have to be people in the physical realm, like around you. These can be people who you've never really met, but we will dive into what a community means and really the importance of it, because I think it's often overlooked more for the other kind of pillars that you see here, but it is absolutely instrumental and it deserves its own time in the life there here. And then the third part, obviously, is the performance. So here we're talking about, how you evaluate how well that you are doing in your job, your day-to-day. But not just your job, it goes a bit further in evaluating how you're doing in your career as a whole. Because your career isn't defined just by the current job where you're at, but it's defined more so by the whole journey, right? Your whole career back and forward. And then finally, we'll also touch on the actual learning portion, which is kind of, where the growth really happens, the lack of stagnation, I guess we can call it, moving forward. All right, so starting off, we talk about, the actual plan. Now, I want to quickly say that this plan is just an example. It's made up. This is not mine. This is just kind of a generic thing, but I like certain features about this. So we're kind of going to talk about them. Feel free to use this template if you want to kind of build upon this or switch up some things, or maybe you have a better one, and that's great. And you probably should share that with everyone else. But this plan here, what makes a good plan, first of all? Let's think about that. Having a good plan is about having a realistic plan that has measurable goals. So when we talk about measurable goals, we're talking about a couple of things. They're measured in terms of time, in terms of when you're beginning today. In this example, we're assuming we're beginning in January of 2023, all the way up to 2027. So this is like a 5-year plan. It has the dates there when you want to achieve things, and then kind of measurable actual goals there. In the beginning here, for example, in 2023, we have get promoted to senior data scientist. We're assuming you're a junior data scientist. This is your plan. You want to get promoted. That is a measurable thing. You can say definitively whether you got promoted or you didn't. The reason why we want to index more, measurable goals, or certain goals are harder to measure, and they have value, but that sometimes can be a bit hard, especially when life happens. It can be difficult to say how well you accomplished the task. But having some goals which are definite, I guess you can call these binary goals of whether you got promoted or not, and some goals that are more kind of adjustable, like the second one here, you want to make a certain amount of money per year, really helps. And we don't shy away from the fact that money matters, right? We work a lot of times for money, and so that should be one of your goals, and you should really have an idea in mind what salary that you want and how you want to get there. But amid these goals, it isn't just all about money, of course, and all about titles. It's also about the things that you want to learn, what you want to be good at. And so an example here could be someone might say, I want to learn more about GPT-3. For those who don't know, this is NLP, kind of the new frontier of NLP technology now. Maybe someone wants to learn about that. If that's what you want to learn, that's fine. And you should definitely put it up here. And the thing about this that I also want to point out is this does not have to be relevant to your current role. It's okay to have goals that aren't actually things that you do day to day. An example of this is I'm a data scientist who works on spam and fraud, like Gracie mentioned at the beginning. But there are things that are not even in my wheelhouse, like image detection, that I find fascinating. And I try to find time to really learn those things because they're interesting to me. And I don't know, maybe in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, I might actually end up switching to a role where I can leverage those things. So always think, don't limit yourself to your current job. Think of your life kind of holistically, or your career holistically, let me say. And then there, maybe you want to learn. Oh, there's a typo there, but maybe you want to learn about AI ethics, because it's a big topic item added in there. It's good to have a variety of things that you're learning, not just indexing just all the technical stuff, which we'll get into. I don't want to preemptively kind of dive into that, but I do want to say it isn't all about technical skills. There's kind of more areas that you need to consider. So yeah, what we're talking about here is just other things that are maybe not be showing up here is like, what type of organization do you want to work with, right? Maybe you want to work. Do you want to work with a startup? Do you want to work with a big organization? Do you want to be in government, or do you want to do contracting? All these things you should have figured out, or at least figure out where you want to be within the next couple of years and how you plan on getting there. What seniority level do you expect, right? Are you trying to be a senior data scientist? Are you trying to be a staff? Are you trying to be the director of data science? All of these things are part of this plan. And it's your plan. The good thing is there's no wrong way to do this. This is just doing it the way that makes sense for you. Again, you are the CEO of your career, so you really need to do what it takes. Yeah, so this plan, I'm just going to move on from it now, but I will share this also for people who are interested in it. I'll share this on my LinkedIn if you want to build a plan. Okay, the next thing here is community. So this is actually my favorite pillar. I think because I used to underestimate how important a community can be. But finding a community that will help you advance is critical. And these communities can be in different ways. As we see here, we have an example of community on LinkedIn. This is actually the people you follow, the people you've connected with. But it goes beyond just LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a good kind of foray into networking, but there's more to it. So there's your alumni network. If you went to college, or if you went to a boot camp, some of your kind of boot camp mates, those are people who you should really connect with, right? Both the professors, the other people you studied with, or even newer people who are years behind you. It helps to connect with all these people, because you don't know where someone's going to be. You don't know what people are working on. But by connecting, you get exposed to so much more. Because one thing that's important to remember is that you can only really experience so much by yourself. But when you network with other people, you get exposed to other things that they've been exposed to. I think there's an old adage that says, your network is your net worth, which I absolutely love. It's a bit cliche, but it's absolutely true. The people around you will help you. Right now, with all the layoffs going on, people are leveraging their network a lot. You'll find that people, will post on LinkedIn, post online, or just reach out to other people that they know. And it's the best way for you to find a new role. Or even if you're not laid off and you're just still working, don't wait till the end, right? To try to start networking. No one likes that person who only reaches out to you when they want something. So establishing a solid network is absolutely critical here. Because these people, they're sources of knowledge, they're sources of wisdom, sources of clarity. It's really the best way for you to just know what's going on out there. It's also one of the best ways to realize sometimes, you have a plan, like the goal that we talked about before, the plan. And then by networking, you might actually realize you're more interested in something that never even crossed your mind until you talk to someone. So really think about all these kind of areas in which you can network. Some of the others I didn't mention here, obviously, are whether it's the Kaggle community where you're doing your projects. It could also be local meetups, because maybe you're tired of doing everything virtual. Find people in your area who are also interested in data science. In my area, there are meetup groups on NLP, meetup groups on different kind of facets of data science, and we meet up maybe once a month, sometimes virtual stuff, and it really helps, right? I've got to learn a lot about academia from people who I'm not in academia, so I would never have learned this, but it's really fascinating just to kind of learn that. In my local area as well, there's a club called The Gathering Spot, which is great. We have a tech circle. We get together and we talk about kind of things that are going on. When there are conferences, we go together, we help each other out. And it's amazing to see that in real life. And another one that I want to bring up here is the ERGs as well. So ERGs are employee resource groups. Some of you may work at companies that have these, and these are the groups or clubs that are within your company for certain groups of people. So an example of this could be at Reddit, we have multiple ERGs. One of them would be Black People Reddit. So these are Black people who work at Reddit. And kind of joining those groups is amazing because you get to learn so much. And sometimes those groups may not necessarily be data science focused, and that's okay. Don't limit yourself to just data science, right? You're still networking with other people, maybe someone who's in healthcare. And then maybe you might realize you have a data science understanding that they don't, and they have a medical understanding that you don't. And who knows, maybe you can collaborate and work on a project that becomes the next big thing. So all of these things help. Really look into them. If you don't have these at your company, it's worth kind of asking if you can start one of these. Typically, companies are amenable to that sort of thing. So figure out what other people in your company are really interested in or working on and connect with them. Yeah. All right. The third pillar here is performance reviews. So we really recommend doing frequent performance evaluations, not waiting for the ones that are mandated by your company. Maybe your company does these once a year, or maybe you do them twice a year, as most companies do. But it's important for you to not just wait until the time for that comes, but really to carve out your own performance evaluation time so that you can figure out your strengths and your weaknesses. You also need to figure out other things like what do you really enjoy about your job, and what do you hate. It's important to spend time doing this so that you can really know how well you're doing. Because we can talk about everything else in this presentation. We can talk about planning, we can talk about your network. But if you are not really aware of how well you are doing, maybe you're actually better at something than you think, or maybe you're really bad at communicating, that can really hinder your progress. So it's important for you to spend time understanding these things. And I know it's difficult to do a performance review outside of your work structure because you can't go like just asking people questions. But you'd be surprised at having honest conversations with your manager about how well you're doing with certain things. Honest conversations with your colleagues about, what are the things that you can do better to be more, useful to the team, or what are the things that they appreciate about you, or even after projects, it's okay to follow up and say, this project has been done. How could I have done better? And you can do this with a mentor, right? This helps to have a mentor or someone else who's really there to help you. Take the time to understand where you are. Oftentimes, we sometimes overestimate our skills or underestimate our weaknesses. And having a second pair of eyes or third pair of eyes kind of looking into your career will help you avoid this. Yeah, it's I don't think I can over talk about this subject because it's such an important one. And try to break it down also by the different pieces, right? Again, not just the technical pieces. Here's an example that I have here where maybe I say, let me rate my analysis and technical knowledge, and 80%, I'm doing great, right? But what can I do better? It's not just a matter of saying I'm doing something well. It's also a matter of saying, how can I continue to do this? So having this plan where I say, all right, this is what I'm doing well, but I can also do a quicker response time for better project prioritization, right? That helps me. Maybe I'm trying to include my collaboration with XFNs, which is just cross-functional partners. Maybe I realize like to do this better, I need to schedule weekly meetings with the product engineering team. Or maybe I need to keep, a better relationship with my PM to understand things. And then maybe this is how I realize, oh, I'm not very good at presenting data. So what can I do to improve? It isn't just about identification, it's identification and then rectification. So maybe I can rectify this by taking a course. Maybe there's a Coursera course or something I can take on effective presenting. Maybe I can do trial runs before I ever present to people, or find and identify a person who is my presentation buddy. This is the person I go to and present. Some people I've had coworkers who even present to their dog before they present to the team just to get that trial run in them. There's no wrong answer here. The point is taking steps of improvement, right? Don't just understand something and not learn from it. The point is to learn by doing, by growing, which is a good segue into the next portion, which is the learning portion. And I think learning is one that most people focus on when we think about organizing our career, just because we generally do a good job as data scientists of trying to keep learning. And the industry changes really fast, right? The way data science looked some 7-8 years ago isn't the same way data science looks now, right? The tools are different. The languages are maybe kind of the same, but there are many libraries added. There's a whole lot of new stuff going on. But never stop learning. That's the idea. Is you should always be upskilling your technical skills, soft skills, and tracking trends in the industry. Learning here isn't just about learning the new neural net or learning, how to use graph AI or something like that. It's also about understanding what's new in the industry. I know it can be annoying at times because there's a lot going on, but it is very important for you to have an idea of how the industry is shifting and changing. What is going to be hot in the next few years, even if it's in your area, it helps to be aware. Right now, for example, one of the big things that have kind of come about is things like ML as a service. So if you think of a platform like Hugging Face, it didn't exist a couple of years ago, but it's really changed the landscape, right? Now you can go on Hugging Face, download a model, use that model, or pre-trained model, and then you can retrain that model or add to it. These are things that didn't exist before, but it's important to think about the ramifications of ML as a service, right? What does that mean for the industry in total? How does that affect you? And so learning and really reading and taking time to understand where the market is going can save you a time. It also helps you when figuring out the next steps for your own career. If I'm thinking, what do I want to do with my data science career 10 years from now? I don't know what data science is going to look like 10 years from now. So I need to spend time understanding where things are going. So generally recommend setting aside some weekly learning time. It could be an hour a week that you spend for reading or coding something new that you've never done, or could be watching YouTube videos, but you should always really be learning. You should not be at a point where you're stagnant doing the same things. If you feel like, I don't know what to learn, or I don't know what's going on, try picking a project you did maybe 3 years ago and seeing how you would do that project today. If you find that it's still the same way, you wouldn't change a thing, that might be an indication that there's an opportunity for you to learn. Figure out how you can improve your own processes, figure out how you can learn about what's going on, out there. But it's also important to not try to learn every single thing, because it's such a wide space that you can't possibly learn, every single model, every single AI tool. You can't learn everything. So you need to prioritize within that growth. And so here, this is why I have a pyramid, just to show you kind of the structure of an example of me saying, I want to learn graph algorithms and, some ML ops stuff. That's the most important thing to me. But under that, there are other things I want to learn, like AI ethics within large organizations and what that means for the future. And then maybe in my spare time, not as critical, I also want to learn something like image to text or text to image or stuff like that. Because of these new things like stable diffusion, which is an example of something that's really new that didn't exist 3 years ago, at least wasn't as popular 3 years ago. Okay, so I think at this point, I want to take a quick pause to field some questions.
Thank you for that. Good first half of the presentation. We have one question in the chat right now that says, what are the prior knowledge required to start from the beginning? I would assume within the data science field.
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. Okay, so the question here is, what's the prior knowledge required from the beginning? To be honest with you, I've seen people get into data science without much prior knowledge. I think it helps to have something that helps. It is useful to have an analytical mindset. And I don't mean analytical in the terms of the technical analytical skills of like coding and stuff. I mean more so just the ability to break down a question into its parts, or the ability to even ask the right questions, right? The ability to take a problem and make it into smaller chunks and then attack it that way. That kind of analytical skill. If you also have any sort of math background, it's absolutely helpful. Statistics is key. It's one of those overlooked things as well, but it's a really big part of data science. So really taking time to learn statistics. You don't have to go and get a whole statistical degree, but reading books on statistics will help you kind of give you the fundamentals in which everything else is built on. So yeah, don't skip that. Don't just like jump into coding. Try to like learn the basics first. Yeah, I think that's probably the prior knowledge.
Great. Okay, one more question just popped in.
Okay.
As I have a bachelor's degree in business administration and I got my associate's degree in business management focusing on cybersecurity. Actually, there's no question with that. Kind of looks like a statement. Maybe I didn't get the first half. Oh, here we go. What type of job can I apply for and how can I get the job I applied for?
Okay, great. So you're saying you have a bachelor's degree in business administration, focusing on cyber. Okay, what type of job? So you're trying to go into data, I'm assuming, and you currently have a degree in business administration and associates in business management, focusing on cyber. Okay, so whenever you're pivoting careers, it helps to find your transferable skills. Like, first of all, identifying what skills that you have that match the industry that you're trying to go into. So for example, you're trying to become a data scientist and you're in cyber. Maybe that's the way you can kind of go in, is trying to go in through cybersecurity. That can be done if you're already working in a company. You can talk to the people within the company and say, hey, I'm interested in data science. How can I apply some of these things? And then you start with small projects where you apply some data science stuff to your field. That's one way to do it. Or you can actually reach out to the data science team and say, hey, I'm interested. I'm trying to learn from the beginning. Some companies will kind of let you, start at the beginning or do kind of rotational programs. Just try to find common ground. Never think of it as if you're starting from zero. You're often starting from one or two. There are transferable skills, and then use those. But try whenever you're learning data in the beginning. I find it's easier to learn data science with data that means something to you than just random data. So that's why sometimes people talk about downloading like your Apple Watch data or using that. Or in this case, you're familiar with cybersecurity or management. Figure out a use case in which you can use data to solve some like business management problems. That way, at least like you don't feel like you don't understand the use case and you don't understand the data. You can be like, the data, I'm not so sure, but I understand the field. So it kind of lessens kind of the pain of learning. And overall, it will save you a lot of time.
All right. And we'll do one more question and then we'll jump back into the presentation. And just a reminder to everyone who is attending this, we will have another Q&A at the end of it. So feel free to throw in all of your questions here. Looks like we have how to be a reliable data person is a question.
Ooh, I love that question. That's a very good question. Okay, so how to be a reliable data person? I think it really comes down to being trustworthy in the analysis that you do in the presentations that you do. The truth of the matter is data is a very tricky thing. It's a fickle beast. There have been stats that have said like data scientists spend 80% of their time cleaning data and stuff like that. I can neither confirm or deny that number being true. It's just something I read. But there is a considerable portion in which we try to kind of, clean our data or kind of smooth out the data to work with it. And oftentimes things don't go as planned. Sometimes you're using data without realizing that there are errors in the data that are not your fault or something, or there's issues with the data and then you do some analysis. First of all, you need to be honest. It's okay to say, I did this work, I did something, and actually it's not correct because something happened, whether, my model was wrong or something was wrong with the data or there was some confusion. Honesty is okay. It's okay to come back and say, this analysis initially said there's a 78% chance of increasing revenue if we do this, but realistically now it's actually 52. Do that. Don't be too shy or too scared to kind of question the things that you said. Another way to be reliable is by asking questions, not just blindly following, but always asking the right questions. Something that happens, and I'll talk about this a bit in the slides coming forth, is sometimes people will come to you with a project and kind of dump it on you and want you to solve it for them. But you need to take time to really ask the questions to understand what it is they're trying to do, because it's okay to say an ML model is not the solution here. I know data scientists were hungry. Sometimes you just want to go in there and start modeling and coding. That might not be the solution. So it's okay to say this is not something we can do, or to say this is not something I personally can do, and finding the person who can do that. So understanding your skills and your weaknesses is always the best way to establish like how reliable you are. Instead of just saying, I can do everything, I can fit a neural net, and you can't. So yeah.
All right, awesome. Like I said, we're going to jump back into the presentation now, and then we'll have more time for questions at the end of it.
Cool. All right, so let's move on. All right, so we're going to talk about the future of data science, which I think someone also asked one of these questions. So good timing there. All right. So the main changes that we're seeing in the field are in like the applications of AI to other areas. So things like text to image, things like deepfakes have been around for a while now. We're seeing a bunch of no-code platforms. We're seeing, I mentioned before, models as a service, as you get from like Hugging Face. I think this really is the future of data science. Is really just AI itself will be something that's just being applied to other areas. And so this shouldn't scare you. I mean, nowadays AI can like write code. Nowadays AI can do art. This really shouldn't scare you. If anything, this kind of highlights what you need to do as a data scientist, which I think it's really about the new data scientist is going to be a subject matter expert instead of being a generalist who just knows a bunch of models and knows how to deal with data, but isn't really specified or isn't really tailored to any field. What I mean by a subject matter expert is, for example, maybe your knowledge or your skills are really within the healthcare industry, and then you apply data science to the healthcare industry. Instead of just being a journalist who's like, I can work in healthcare, or I can work in automation, or I can work in spam and fraud. I think it helps to become a subject matter expert because AI is taking away a bunch of the work that we used to have to do, kind of the mundane parts of data science. So this shouldn't be scaring you. If anything, it should be exciting because now you'll be able to do your job, but you need to understand the subject. And then you also still need to understand like what's going on under the hood of the AI and how you can use it. But yeah, gone will be the days. I don't think in 10 years from now, most data scientists will be writing like models from scratch. I really don't think so. But this is also just my opinion. I might be wrong. I think most data scientists will be just applying AI that is already pre-built models or pre-trained models to their use cases. So that's how I see data science kind of changing in the future there. All right. Okay, project management. So oftentimes you start out in your career, you're doing a bunch of projects, everything's fine, but as you go up in your career, as you get promoted from like junior to senior to even like above that lead or whatever, you get to have multiple projects and they get to be really big and get to be very frustrating. It's extremely important for data scientists to take kind of a software engineering approach to project management, which is like using things like Kanban boards, which is kind of like what you see here, or like things like Scrum. I know sometimes they scare some data scientists and it feels too technical, it feels too software engineering, but this is really useful, especially when you have multiple projects of varying priority. Learning good project management is a skill everybody should absolutely have, both within your team structure and then also as an individual. So if you work at a team right now, which I know some of you probably do, that doesn't do any sort of project management, doesn't do any sort of a Kanban board, it's worth taking a step back and suggesting it. You can be amazing at your job. You write amazing code. Everything's great, right? You're the person who always gets 99% accuracy on your code because you're so great. But if you can't manage your projects, it's really pointless. You need to be able to deliver these projects in time, understand how these projects are faring, being able to communicate with your stakeholders when things will be done. And the best way to do this is through project management. I won't recommend any specific project management tools because there are so many out there, and people have pros and cons. I mean, all of them have pros and cons, but take some time to really carve out within your week just time for project management. I start off my day, the first 30 minutes of every day, it's just project management. It's understanding what I'm working on, what I should be working on, my blockers, all of that. And although it's 30 minutes, it saves me hours at the end of the week because I'm not just doing what I did in the beginning of my own career, which was just having just a Google sheet of projects I'm doing and kind of attacking it that way. That just doesn't work in the long term. So recommend this for your team, seriously. And not using project management is one of the leading causes, in my opinion, of burnout, because it's so easy to get overwhelmed if you're not managing your projects well. When you manage them well, you know when to deprioritize, when to reprioritize, or when to add new stuff. So yes, I cannot emphasize this anymore. Okay, and then let's talk about business sense. So this is akin to my previous point about being a subject matter expert. And what that means oftentimes is having business sense. It's really understanding the business's goals, right? And it's critical for your success. You don't necessarily need to be an MBA to have like all this knowledge about business, but understanding your business's goals. Essentially, step away from the math a little bit and the technical stuff and focus some OKRs on just understanding what your organization is trying to do, right? In this way, when you do that, you can ask yourself how your projects affect the business, because there may be projects that you have that actually don't affect the business much. And why does this matter? This matters because data science has changed a lot as a career. And there are many organizations or many companies that will hire data scientists, pay them a ton of money, and then maybe a year or two later, they're like, hey, we hired all these people and we're seeing low ROI. This is pointless. Why did we hire all these people not getting anything? And sometimes that happens because you have some data scientists who are not understanding the business and then being given tasks that either cannot be solved at all or are just not that important to the business. At the end of the day, you need to understand, as a data scientist, your job isn't just to provide data or fancy models or stuff like that or dashboards, but it's actually to solve business problems using data science. I'll say that again. Your job isn't to provide data and fancy models, but it's really just to solve business problems using data science. Data science is merely, or data in this case, or data science, let's say, is merely a tool. It's like a hammer, right? The carpenter's job is to build things, whether he uses a hammer for this or a screwdriver or some other machine he created, doesn't matter as long as the table is built. Think of it that way. As data science, your goal is to provide ROI. It's to accomplish some tasks, to answer some questions. Focus on that before you even focus on the technical. Like spend time learning that, and then you can know which is the right model to apply in this case, or do we need a model? Then you can know who to present to, when to present, right? Even like understanding how to present appropriately, understanding who the stakeholders are is all part of that business sense logic, right? You cannot just put your head down and code and be done. Unfortunately, as a data scientist, that just won't work, especially, with the current climate that we're in. You really need to be more of all-rounded person, right? Balance your technical with your business acumen. You've noticed some companies that nowadays just want to apply AI to everything, right? Like a water company that claims that they have this state-of-the-art model that determines the best flavor pairing for sparkling flavored water. That doesn't make sense, right? In the grand scheme of things, that's not an area we need to apply AI. But there might be a data scientist working on that, and that's going to waste a lot of time at the end where they say, well, why did we pay this data science team millions of dollars for this thing that could have been done without AI? But now if a data scientist was able to really question and say, does this make sense? Is there a different way we can do this? A cheaper way that we can do this, a faster way that we can do this? It not only does work for you as an individual so that you work on things that matter, it also helps your team. It also helps your company to save money. So at the end of the day, it is a win-win. So kind of try to avoid that impulse of trying to just dive into things, ask the right questions, take time, always ask how does this affect things at the top level, which is why metrics are a very important thing. And this is a part where I go into my rant of metrics. I love metrics, and I think you should always have guiding metrics within your job. These metrics always ask how something affects the metric. If your metric is revenue, how does this project affect revenue? If the metric is daily active visitors, how does this affect that? Always think of it in terms of the metric at the end of the day instead of just the project itself for the sake of doing projects. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to move forward. All right, I think we are towards the end here. So branding, your brand. Now, this is an important one. When I'm talking about branding here, first of all, let me make it clear. I'm not just talking about like your brand as an influencer on Instagram. That's not what I mean, although that helps. I'm talking about personal branding. And personal branding is defined as the process of developing a mark that is created around your name or your career. You use this mark to express and communicate your skills, your personality, and your values. This is from thebalancemd.com. I'll read it again just because I love the way this goes. It says, personal branding is the process of developing a mark that is created around your name or your career. You use this mark to express and communicate your skills, personality, and values. So what this is talking about is just really your brand is what people think of when they hear your name. What is your name associated with? And it's a very cool thing and important thing to have, right? Even within your company, it's not just enough to be a data scientist in the company, but it's good to become a go-to person for specific things. Maybe you are an expert at I don't know, metrics as an example. Maybe you are the metrics person to go to when we're trying to establish new important metrics. This is something that you've carved out your space and people come to you. That's really important for your career, right? Instead of again being a generalist. And this, by the way, this transcends your current job. It isn't just about within your job what you're known for. It's about figuring out a way in which, yes, you're a data scientist, but what type of data scientist are you? Make people know that. Make people know what they can benefit from being with you, from hiring you. And it helps again to be some influencer on TikTok, whatever, if that's your thing. But you don't have to do all that. You just have to make sure that you're intentional about when you interact with people and what you say and how you present yourself and what you talk about. All these things kind of feed into your brand, figuring out to carve out what exactly it is that you do within data science. Because data science, let's be honest, it's such a loaded word. It's such a big word that means everything and nothing all at once. So figure out how you can make some meaning of that. And build a reputation around that. So one of the ways to do this, to build your brand, is by advocating for yourself. So when you're at work, it's really important not just to do your job and just hand it off and you're done, but always be advocating for yourself. Always be making sure people know what you're working on. This is within your team. This is the cross-functional teams. This could be PMs. This could be Eng. People should know what you're working on. That way, your name is in rooms where you're not physically present. That is the power of your brand. You should not, sometimes maybe you're even working on something, someone else wants to work on it, right? We've all been in this case where you find out some team is working on the same exact thing your team is working on. This often happens when people aren't advocating for themselves, or teams specifically aren't even like talking or sharing on what they're doing. It's important to have a culture of sharing, of people knowing what you're doing, what you're good at. This will benefit you immensely. Even if you need a new job, maybe you got laid off, or maybe you just want to make a switch, it helps when people know who you are and what to expect from you before you even open your mouth. It'll seriously save you so much time. And there's this one thing I know about data scientists is we are lazy and we want to save time as much as possible. That's just me. Maybe I'm projecting, but I love saving time. So your brand saves you a lot of time at the end of the day. All right. I think I want to touch on kind of some parting words. This is kind of the last slide here, which is just kind of a recap of all the other things that we talked about, which is that you really do need a plan. Like a plan is an immense thing. That's the first step. But you really also need a community of people around you. You need to do frequent performance reviews for yourself, not your company ones. And always learn. Never stop learning. You should carve out time every week where you're learning something. It could be an hour. And learning could be kind of active or passive learning, but never stop learning, because when that happens, you just that's when you kind of shrivel away when you stop learning. That's the death of you as your career right there, right? And think about establishing a strong brand, just because that will just precede you and live longer, right? There's certain people we can think of. Like, I think if I mention someone like Alex the Analyst, everyone knows him. That's an amazing brand, but it doesn't necessarily need to be that big of a brand. It just needs to be what your name is associated with. Spend time thinking about that. And then last but not least, really just keep tabs on the future of the industry. Our industry is very dynamic. It changes really fast. We don't even know if within the next 15 years, the title data scientist will exist. It might not. It might be obsolete at that time, but that's not scary. It should not scare you, because if you plan things accordingly and keep your ear to the ground and see the way the industry is going, you can always switch, right? You can always do something else. It's also why I am a big fan of being a subject matter expert, is because if you start being a data scientist, you can still provide value within your industry as something else, right? Versus if you focus so much on the title of being a data scientist, if for some reason data science stops being what it is today, you're going to feel lost. What do I do now? What skills do I have? I know nothing, right? So yeah, not to knock generalists. I know we have generalists, but I am a fan of really picking a lane and sticking with it. That's how you get exceptional. Another way to think of it is like being a data scientist is like being a sports person, right? It's better for you to pick a sport and say basketball is my sport and I'm going to get really good at basketball, than kind of just generally being like, I'm just going to be great at all sports. That's great, but it'll be harder for you to be as good if you picked a specific sport and then applied your amazing skills and your physical strength and your sporting ability to that sport. I don't know if that analogy makes sense, but it makes sense to me. All right, I think that is it. We can move on to questions.
All right. Thank you for that presentation. We did get a good amount of questions come in, so we have about 15 minutes to get them going. So let's see. How do you think about the future of data science?
Okay, I think I touched on this a bit in one of my slides about the future, so we can maybe skip that to answer other questions. Yeah.
Let's see. Is there a health-related aspect of data science? If yes, what is the application?
So when you say health related, I assume you mean data science within like the healthcare industry, or like how they meet in the middle, if it's like a Venn diagram. And that's definitely a thing. There are many healthcare people, healthcare data scientists, let me say, who focus on using healthcare data to figure out something. So maybe they're figuring out for insurance companies the best way to provide care, or maybe they're trying to figure out how to, I don't know, maybe how to predict certain medical situations, right? We've all seen the application of neural nets to images, like X-ray images, to figure out whether someone had a tumor or something like that. That's like just one example. So it could be something like that, really in the trenches with the data, trying to make diagnosis and helping doctors. But it can also be about healthcare data in general, really more so around whether that's insurance, whether that's like the operations of hospitals, right? Some hospitals need to figure out, how can we have the right amount of staffing? When should we have people work on certain things? And data science can, in fact, solve that problem. I've seen people work on that. So that's great. And if you have healthcare, experience, it's always good to think about just like within your experience, how can you add data science? The good thing about it is most times you can apply data science to almost anything, right? So yeah, you can apply data science to making toast if you wanted to, but I don't know how useful that is. But hey.
All right, next question. What are the basic skills and tools needed to get a job as a machine learning engineer? Knowing that I have a very good knowledge of deep learning and machine learning, but I feel that is not sufficient for the market. Do I have to have experience with deploy or cloud tools?
Okay, so first, it's a good question. I love it because you mentioned something about being a machine learning engineer, which may sometimes overlap with data science, sometimes it does not. It really depends. So every company is different. But I can answer this question by telling you something that I mentioned in the previous presentation. It's more so a tip on figuring out when you're trying to find jobs. The best way to answer this question is, I'll give you a challenge. Go and find 15 or so machine learning engineering positions, open them up, try to get the requirement list from those, and then put them together, put them in a sheet or something, and then start looking. You will see a pattern emerging very fast. The more jobs you kind of look up, the better. So you can go 20, 30 to 1, 2 if you have the time. But you start to see patterns emerging where there are certain things that companies are asking for machine learning engineers. An example of this, they might all be mentioning Kubernetes, or at least 60% mention Kubernetes. That means that might be something you need to learn. If 70% of them are mentioning something about knowing to use GCP or AWS, like the cloud tools, then that means that's something that a lot of MLE jobs are looking for. So that's the best way to understand what's needed for a job, is literally just paying attention to job descriptions and networking. When you network with other people who are already MLEs, they will tell you what they're using day to day in their jobs. Learn those skills, and then you'll be good. So instead of me telling you the actual skills, if you do that, you'll get way more insights.
Okay, great. This LinkedIn user asked, may I have additional information for the job hunting coaching program you have? I am transitioning my career from finance to data science, data analytics, and I need coaching in articulating the career transition.
Yeah, so is this, I assume this question has to do with what you were talking about in the beginning, Gracie, about the services that are actually offered through High Counselor.
Okay, yeah. Let's see. Okay, yeah, I can touch base on this one later. Let's see. I am transitioning from an accountant to a business data analyst. I just received a master's degree in business analytics. How to land an entry-level business data analyst position, but no prior data-related working experience.
Right. Okay. So this is kind of what I mentioned before of, when you're doing a transition, you should find ways in which you can use transferable skills. So in here, you're an accountant, which means that you deal with data a lot, financial data mostly. How can you apply the data analytical skills you learned in your program to that accounting or financial data? That's probably the best way for you to start. So you can do this either within your current job, or you can try to find a new job that has some sort of accounting in it and data analytics. That way, again, you're not starting from zero because you have that accounting knowledge and you're just mirroring it with data. And you can start off with doing your own pet projects, maybe use some fake data or whatever accounting data that you have. I'm sure you can find some of that. Try to do your data analytics projects on that, and then create a portfolio. And then you can show that to prospective employees. Like, I've worked with this data before, accounting data. This is what I can do for you. That's the best way to do things. So projects, and then finding kind of that middle ground, and then networking as well, going to like events. I'll tell you this right now, most jobs, I saw something that said over 70% of jobs are not posted online. Most jobs are really kind of like spread through word of mouth or through the community. So what you're doing when you're applying for jobs is you're applying for the 30% of jobs that you see. It's like the surface level stuff. You want to get into that 70% that's not seen. And funny enough, it's actually less competitive because it's about who you know. Horrible to say it, but it is really about who you know. So spend time building your network and learning, like meeting other data people and just connecting with them, talking to them, genuinely talking to them. You would be surprised how many times I've heard people just say, hey, my company is thinking of this role. Are you interested? And then 6 months later, they make the role for their person and then they give it to them. So that might be a way to do it. But also just obviously spend time with the actual skills to learn. So, yeah.
All right. This next one says, I have a certification in Microsoft Azure AZ900 and certain Google Data Analytics. What type of job roles or career can I take?
Sorry, can you read that one again?
It says, I have a cert in Microsoft Azure AZ900 and cert in Google Data Analytics. What type of job roles or career can I take?
Yeah, okay. So the Google Data Analytics course, I know specifically, is a good intro starter course for people who are interested in getting into data science or data analytics. So I think you're in a good place. And then the Microsoft Azure, I'm not familiar with that specific certification. I can't speak to it, but I know Azure has to do with cloud. So there's kind of one thing here is cloud, the other thing is data analytics, from what I'm understanding. And you could probably pick a path whether you want to go the cloud route or the data analytics route. But you can definitely leverage that data analytics, the course that you got from Google, that search that you got from Google, and try to get data analytics jobs. I will say it will be competitive because a lot of people have been taking that course, and it's a great course. Sometimes the truth is it might not be enough by itself to land you some roles. So keep learning, build upon it. It's a very good step in the right direction. just keep learning more projects, and then you can definitely get a data analyst job. Think of like whether it could be internships, or think of entry level jobs in data analytics through maybe start off with like smaller companies or something like that. It can help you. And then once you have the confidence, you can always switch over to a bigger company, or the company that you like, or a startup or something like that.
Okay. Now, this user says, I have my bachelor's degree in business admin and got my associate's degree in business management focusing on cybersecurity. What is a good path to choose for me with my degrees? Should I go towards the business analyst path or technical path?
That completely depends on you, right? That completely depends on you. We have to do a self-evaluation and see what your interests are and what your skills are. The good thing about skills is skills are easier to change, right? You can be not skilled at something today. With enough time and patience, you can learn that and get those technical skills. But what are you more interested in? Because you might actually find like the technical stuff to be very mundane and boring. I've met many brilliant people who hated, the mundane stuff of data science, of like cleaning data and dealing with that. It can be very annoying, to be fair. So maybe some people want to focus more so on just like the presentation, the business side of things, the actual making decisions. That's fine. The only way you can answer this question is really just by like doing introspection and maybe trying out both if you have the opportunity. So if you get a job that's technical, try it out, see how you like it for a while. A year or two in the grand scheme of things aren't that long a time to figure out what you're more interested in. So try to find a job that gives you both and then commit to one of them. Is my advice.
Okay, great. Looking down here, LinkedIn user, according to you, what is the most roughest task in data science and how to overcome from that?
Ooh, beautiful question. It's a great question. The roughest task. If you asked me before, I would have told you, like I just said, like the kind of boring parts of like data munging and all that. Now things have changed a lot. The data has become better quality. Things have generally become better. It also depends on where you work. I'm at a place where I feel much more comfortable with that. I will say the toughest part really has to do with people. It's oftentimes we're very technical, and like I was talking about before, we just want to do the work. But you really have to spend time dealing with people to be a successful data scientist. You need to be able to talk to people in a way that they will understand, right? Tailoring your conversational style to who you're talking to. When you're talking to other data scientists, maybe we're more technical and we're talking about like what's under the hood of the algorithm or whatever. But when I'm talking to certain managers who might not be technical, but still very managerial, you have to change kind of that lingo and deal with it that way. So sometimes that can be jarring for people. Also, dealing with people who do not understand data science, but assume that they do, can be very difficult. They might come to you and just say, hey, build me a model that does X, Y, and Z. And it makes no sense. Or maybe the best thing that we need isn't even a model, but people just want to be able to say, our product is powered by ML. And that makes things very difficult when you're being pushed to do things just for the sake of doing it. So you have to have some nuance in kind of dealing with people. So kind of communication skills are a must there, but also I would say the trickiest bit. But that might just be my case. Someone else might have a different answer to that.
Okay. Now, this question says, how do I build my own data analytics / data science portfolio from scratch? I don't know how or where to start.
Yeah, okay. So if you want to start doing that, nowadays there are so many data sets online, like seriously, so many free data sets online. The first and most biggest place I can tell you is probably Kaggle. Kaggle has a bunch of data projects. A lot of them also kind of help you learn because they have like notebooks that they share. So I'll start there. They have the data sets. They have some like guidance on how to start doing stuff. But then there are also other places you can go for data. There's data.gov, which will give you governmental data. There are GitHub repos that have a ton of data. Hugging Face, which I mentioned before, also isn't just models. They have a bunch of data, so you can just go and download data sets. So what you do is just find the data sets, do a bunch of projects, upload those projects somewhere. Preferably GitHub is the best place for portfolios. It also gets you to learn how to do version control. And then once you have a number of projects, it doesn't have to be 50 projects. It could literally be 5 projects. That's fine. Put that on your resume and try to get other people to critique those projects and kind of learn and improve those projects, and you're pretty much on your way.
Okay. And to kind of snowball off of that one, how important are portfolio projects when looking for a data science role?
I think they're very important, especially for people in the beginning of their career where you don't have experience to show or to speak of. Doing projects is really good. Not to say that for senior level data scientists it's not important, it still helps, but generally speaking, it's a bit less like required, because you can say you worked at such and such company. You can speak more to the projects you actually did because you worked at those companies. So spending time doing them is very critical. But then they also just help for your own learning and development in general, just doing projects. So.
Okay. All right. Great. Gonna see if I skipped any. This looks like a high counselor one, so let me see if I can answer that. Can the high counselor help me set my resume and LinkedIn profile around those degrees and work history? Absolutely. So high counselor will optimize your resume and LinkedIn profile based on your background, whether education, work history, all of that. So we don't add any false information on those either. So we can definitely assist with that. I have a geomatics mapping background and recently earned my MBA to pivot out of my mapping career. Can you suggest industries that are leveraging spatial data analysis without focusing solely on the spatial aspect?
Okay, so industries that are leveraging spatial data analysis without focusing on the spatial aspect. I don't know. This is not something that I'm very familiar with. I don't want to lead you astray. I don't know. I have very surface level knowledge of GIS and all that stuff. So maybe that, but yeah, this is one that I'm not so sure. If someone knows, please.
Yeah, I unfortunately do not, so can't help there. Okay, the last one we have here is I struggle with speaking during interviews / presentations. How do I overcome this? So maybe if you want to give your take through like the data field on that.
Yeah, also a good question. And like I said before, speaking is very important. Presentations are super important. Practice. What it is about just like practice, practice, practice. Like I think it's trying to. You can start off by you do your presentation, you look in the mirror, and you just like speak to yourself. It's okay to feel silly doing certain things. I have. Oh, she's not in here right now, but I have my dog. Sometimes I practice things on my dog. I just tell her, explain to her what I'm going to be saying to my stakeholders, and she doesn't respond that much, to be honest with you. I don't know what's her deal, but it does help you just kind of build that skill of like getting it out of you. Also, saying things for the first time is often scarier than when you're saying them for the fifth time. And so the more you say something, the more kind of ingrained it feels. It's like muscle memory, kind of. There are also many courses I've seen online or on YouTube with like coaches who help people with that. So if you have the resources, it might be worth hiring a coach to really help you with that, like how to do presentations, how to affect your cadence, speaking speed, all of that, gestures, the whole works. So I'll look into coaching.
Okay, great. And that is something High Counselor can assist with mock interview prep as well. I will take one more question, but before I read that, I do want to let everyone know we will be throwing in the chat a bunch of links that pertain to High Counselor. The first one being a feedback form. So if there's anything you want to let us know about webinars, what you'd like to see in the future, please fill that out. Our next cohort start date, I see that is a question in the chat, is going to be December 19th. So we'll throw that in there with the application link. So how to get in touch with us, go ahead and apply, and then we'll let you know from there. As a reminder, we do have a job fair on December 13th as well. So we'll throw the link in for that. And again, we do have info sessions every week. So there is one tonight. The link will be thrown in as well. So the last question we'll do, I have 6 years of experience in web application development. I am doing my master's in business analytics, interested in ML and analytics. What kind of job roles can I look for? Do I need to look for entry-level data science jobs? Any roles that fit my interests and experience?
Well, good question. I think it depends really on the companies. There might be jobs that will hire you as entry level, but since you also have some experience, you said in web app development, it's possible that you might go in as not an entry level. It really just depends on the company, but you can definitely get jobs, especially depending on your level of skill, right? So without knowing your level of skill, it's a bit difficult because one of the things is a lot of jobs sometimes will be hiring. Let's say they say we want a data analyst or a data scientist. Sometimes they'll kind of slot you in depending on your performance during those interviews, right? And so if you perform really well and you show that you have kind of the skills, they might give you a non-entry level position versus if they feel like maybe you still kind of like are a bit rough around the edges, they'll give you entry level. I would say apply to both and see what happens. Don't limit yourself to only applying to entry level, but be open-minded and realize it's okay to work your way up through things. So the answer is both. You can probably get both entry level or like maybe like junior level as well. Yeah, it depends with your skill level.
All right, awesome. Well, that wraps up our webinar today. Thank you so much for joining us today. And again, all of the links that I just talked about will be thrown in the chat. But Takunda, thank you so much for joining us today. And any last words before we let everyone go?
Yeah, good luck, everybody. Data science is great. I'm so glad that you guys were able to join us today. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any more questions. Thank you so much, Gracie and High Counselor, for having me.
Yeah, of course. Have a good day, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Bye.